Experience, Jackson Snyder presents. We will examine the life of our Master Yeshua by discovering his ancestors, family, and friends, by reviewing rare ancient manuscripts, and speaking to those who know him best. From the Vero Essene Yahad, now Experience, Jackson Snyder presents. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Controversial Topics Forum. And I want to introduce to you, not really a new friend. We've known each other for, a couple of years anyway, on and off and had conversations. But Guy Smith is a great fellow. And he's going to lead us in a greater understanding of what I've seen here as the greater Israel. And he talked about the blessings and the curses. He's going to put that in as well. But he's got a presentation to give that he'll use screen share on, and I've been looking real forward to it, and I hope you have too. So without further ado, let's go to speaker view.
Okay, so, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Let me put the screen share on, and...
Hey, you do that good.
Do you believe that?
Practicing.
I'm old. Okay, so everybody see this?
Real well.
Okay, I've titled it The Law and the Prophets, and what we're going to discuss is really about the prophetic scriptures. And anything that we're discussing can actually be, you'll see I have a webpage, exodusx.com, and if you care to get more information, there's more details, there. That said, I would like to dedicate this discussion to the woman that anointed the Son of Man when he was in Simon the leper's house. Everybody, the law and the prophets, everybody is somewhat aware of the law. It's the Torah, and this is the first thing that we're gonna address. And most people are aware of like the feast and keeping Shabbat and the menorah, and there's a lot of different things. But the thing is that there is a deception out there, and this deception has people their focus not on something. A message is being conveyed by the prophets. So first we need to address the law. And then we will be getting into the prophets after that. Hosea points out, he says, Yahweh says, my people are destroyed from the lack of knowledge. And the Son of Man points out, he says, do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish it, but to fulfill it. So this is really very, very, very critical. So in this, we're going to be addressing the blessing and the curse and the promise of restoration, because this is something that is overlooked by most everybody. These are instructions that the children of Israel, after having been in the wilderness for 40 years, are about to cross over into the land, and they're given final instructions concerning what they're going to do. So these are the instructions before entering the land. Brother Mike.
You shall therefore keep every commandment which I am commanding you today, so that you may be strong and go in and possess the land into which you are about to cross to possess it. Deuteronomy 11:8.
And this is the description of the borders of the land.
Every place in which the sole of your foot treads shall be yours. Your border will be from the wilderness to Lebanon, and from the river Euphrates, as far as the western sea. Deuteronomy 11:24.
And this is basically what was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These are the borders. But what we have here is that this land is something that Yahweh is jealous for.
Then will Elohim be jealous for his land and pity his people. Joel 2:18.
We're also kind of provided with how to identify the land.
For the land in which you are entering to possess is not like the land of Egypt from which you came from, where you used to sow your seed and water it with your foot like a vegetable garden. But the land into which you are about to cross over to possess is a land of hills and valleys, which drinks water from the rain of heaven. It is a land with which Yahweh your Elohim cares for. The eyes of Yahweh your Elohim are always on it, from the beginning even to the end of the year. Deuteronomy 11:10 through 12.
So the idea is that the land the Father takes care of. And if you're not in the land, you have to take care of it.
You talking about that physical land on the map?
The physical land.
Okay.
Okay, so the blessing and the curse defined.
See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing, if you listen to the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I am commanding you today, and the curse, if you do not listen to the commandments of Yahweh Elohim, but turn aside from the way which I am commanding you today, by following other gods which you have not known. Deuteronomy 11:26-28.
So, very simply, if you keep the commandments, you'll receive the blessings. And if you don't keep the commandments, you're going to get the curse. Now, if they keep the commandments, this is what they get. Prolong your days while in the land.
You shall therefore keep every commandment which I am commanding you today, so that you may be strong and go in and possess the land into which you are about to cross to possess it, so that you may prolong your days on the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers to give to them and to their descendants, a land flowing with milk and honey. Deuteronomy 11:8-9.
Your enemies are going to fear you while in the land.
No man will be able to stand before you. Yahweh your Elohim will lay the dread of you and the fear of you on all the land on which you set foot, as he hath spoken to you. Deuteronomy 11:25.
There'll be rain. You're not going to have to irrigate.
It shall come about, if you listen obediently to my commandments, which I am commanding you today, to love Yahweh your Elohim and to serve him with all your heart and all your soul, that he will give the rain for your land in its season, the early and late rain, that you may gather in your grain and your new wine and your oil. He will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied. Deuteronomy 11:13-15.
There'll be no sickness in the land. There'll be no miscarriages. You'll live to a ripe old age in the land.
But you shall serve Yahweh your Elohim, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will remove sickness from your midst. There shall be no one miscarrying or barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. Exodus 23:25-26.
But if they don't keep the commands, well, this is where the bad news comes into the picture while they're in the land. Now, I want to point out that this is what the prophets were conveying to the people when they weren't keeping the commandments. And this is what got the prophets killed.
But it shall come to pass, if you do not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to carefully observe all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you today, that all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. Deuteronomy 28:15.
There'll be diseases.
Then Yahweh will bring severe and lasting plagues on you and your descendants, even miserable and chronic sicknesses. He will bring back on you all the diseases of Egypt, of which you were afraid, and they will cling to you. Deuteronomy 28:59-60.
There'll be no rain.
Beware that your hearts are not deceived, and that you do not turn away and serve other gods and worship them, or the anger of Yahweh will be kindled against you, and he will shut up the heavens so that there will be no rain, and the ground will not yield its fruit, and you will perish quickly from the good land which Yahweh is giving you. Deuteronomy 11:16-17.
Then if you don't repent, because he's trying to get your attention to come back to him, if you don't repent from that, then he's going to send your enemies up against you, and you're going to get defeated.
As swift as the eagle, Yahweh will bring against you a nation from afar, from the end of the earth, whose language you will not understand, a nation of fierce countenance which does not respect the elderly nor show favor to the young. They will eat the increase of your livestock and produce of your land until you are destroyed. They will leave you no grain, no new oil, or the increase of your cattle or the offspring of your flocks until they have destroyed you. And they will besiege you at your gates until your high fortified walls, which you trust in, come down. Throughout all your land they shall besiege you at all your gates, throughout your land which Yahweh your Elohim has given you. Deuteronomy 28:49-52.
And then after you're defeated by your enemies, the survivors are going to be scattered throughout the nations of your enemies.
Then the land will enjoy its Sabbath all the days of the desolation. While you are in your enemy's land, then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbaths. All the days of its desolation it will observe the rest which should not observe on your Sabbath, while you were living on it. As for those of you who may be left, I will also bring weakness into their hearts in the lands of their enemies, and the sound of a driven leaf will chase them. And even when no one is pursuing, they will flee as though from the sword, and they will fall. They will therefore stumble over each other as if running from the sword, although no one is pursuing. And you will have no strength to stand up before your enemies, but you will perish among the nations, and your enemy's land will consume you. So those of you who may be left will rot away because of their iniquity in the lands of your enemies, and also because of the iniquities of their forefathers. They will rot away with them. Leviticus 26:34 through 39.
And that was all the bad news. But thing is that when they're in the land of their enemies, this bad news continues.
And Yahweh will scatter you among all peoples from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, and there you shall serve other gods of wood and stone, which you or your fathers have not known. Among those nations you shall find no rest, nor will you have a resting place for the sole of your foot. And Yahweh will give you a trembling heart, failing of eyes, and anguish of soul. Deuteronomy 28:64-65.
And like I was saying, the bad news that the prophets were telling is what we've been just describing. But there's also laced within the message of the prophets is a promise of good news, promise of restoration.
So it shall be when all of these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you call them to mind in all nations where Yahweh your Elohim has banished you, and you return to Yahweh your Elohim and obey him with all your heart and soul, according to all that I command you today, you and your sons. Then Yahweh your Elohim will restore you from captivity and have compassion on you, and will gather you again from all the peoples where Yahweh your Elohim has scattered you. If your outcasts are at the ends of the earth, from there Yahweh your Elohim will gather you, and from there he will bring you back. Yahweh your Elohim will bring you into the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it, and he will prosper you and multiply you more than your fathers. Deuteronomy 30:1-5.
So this is the good news, the promise of restoration. So you have the bad news, which is the curse, and the good news, which is the promise of restoration. We see this prophecy being throughout the prophetic scriptures, where the prophets are actually giving us more details about it. For example, the message of the two sticks, the prophecy of the two sticks. You need to unmute yourself, Mike.
The word of Yahweh came again to me, saying, And you, son of man, take for yourself one stick and write on it, for Judah and for the sons of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write on it, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel, his companions. Then join them for yourself one to another into one stick, that they may become one in your hand. When the sons of your people speak to you, saying, Will you not declare to us what you mean by these? Say to them, Thus says Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his companions, and I will put them with it, with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they will be one in my hand. The sticks on which you write will be in your hand before their eyes. Thus says Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I will take the sons of Israel from among the nations where they have gone, and I will gather them from every side and bring them into their own land, and I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel, and one king will be king for all of them, and they will no longer be two nations, and no longer be divided into two kingdoms. Ezekiel 37:21-22. So
this is the law. This is Torah. This is little known by most people. This is a very important part of the Torah. And to understand the significance of this is to see how this gets played out. And what we're going to look at is the Exodus from Egypt. And we're going to start with this Exodus from Egypt, and it has three phases. Phase one is the release from slavery. This is where judgment plagues were spread out over Egypt to get Egypt to release the children of Israel out of bondage. Phase two is the wilderness phase. And this is where a covenant was established with the children of Israel.
So Moses was there with Yahweh 40 days and 40 nights. He did not eat bread or drink water, and he wrote on the tablets the word of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. Exodus 34:28.
Phase three is after the 40 years, they actually entered into the land of milk and honey. And after they entered into the land, I won't say it was all roses and all your pleasantries. But what they basically they divided the land up into the 12 tribes, and this is where you saw the blessings, especially under King David and King Solomon.
In that I command you today to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, that you may live and multiply, and that Yahweh your Elohim may bless you in the land where you are entering to possess it. Deuteronomy 30:16.
But in 931 BC, it split into two nations: the northern kingdom, which is made up of the northern 10 tribes, which is referred to as the House of Israel, and the southern kingdom, which is made up of 2 tribes of Benjamin and Judah, which is referred to as the House of Judah. Then in 722, the northern kingdom, the House of Israel, was conquered by Assyria. The significance of this part is they lost their identity because they were thrown in with all the other slaves, the other conquered countries that Assyria referred to as the lost 10 tribes. The House of Judah was conquered by the Babylonians. This is where the old city of Jerusalem and the temple were destroyed. But those that were done captive were able to maintain their identities because they refused to worship their idols, Babylon's idols. And because individuals like Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, they were able to maintain an semblance of their identity. Then 70 years later, the southern kingdom, the House of Judah, returned back to Jerusalem, back to the land. And this is based on the promise of restoration. The northern kingdom and the southern kingdom both fell to the Assyrians and the Babylonians because they were not keeping the commandments of Elohim, and therefore they were under the curse. But they returned, as I'm saying here, they returned after 70 years. And under Nehemiah, they built the walls. The temple had been rebuilt, and they had rebuilt the wall. And they got back into reestablished, a covenant. The problem is the lost 10 tribes of the northern kingdom of the House of Israel still hadn't returned. And the reason being is that they are, they're out there because of the iniquity of their fathers.
You, however, I will scatter you among the nations, and will draw out a sword after you, as your land becomes desolate and your cities become waste. Then the land will enjoy its Sabbath all the days of the desolation, while you are in your enemy's land. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbath all the days of its desolation. It will observe the rest which it did not observe on your Sabbaths, while you were living on it. As for those of you who may be left, I will also bring weakness into their hearts in the lands of their enemies. And the sound of a driven leaf will chase them. And even when no one is pursuing, they will flee as though from the sword, and they will fall. They will therefore stumble over each other as if running from the sword, although no one is pursuing. And you will have no strength to stand up before your enemies. But you will perish among the nations, and your enemy's land will consume you. So those of you who may be left will rot away because of the iniquity in the lands of your enemies, and also because of the iniquities of their forefathers. They will rot away with them.
So the children of these people that were taken off into captivity in Assyria are there because of the iniquity of their forefathers. And Ephraim doesn't realize it.
Ephraim mixes with the nations. Ephraim is a flat loaf not turned over. Foreigners sap his strength, but he does not realize it.
So after that, about 450 years later, the Son of Man comes on the scene. And he's sent to reach out for the house of Israel, which is the northern kingdom, which is not in the land.
But he answered and said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew 15:24.
But our Hebrew brothers didn't accept what the Son of Man had to offer when he was here. And you know how the story ends. Well, it doesn't completely end. Then in 70 AD, there was the Roman, they captured Jerusalem. And the survivors of this atrocity, once again, was scattered throughout the nations. And then in 1948, the southern kingdom returned to the land according to the promise. But the northern kingdom still hasn't returned. So we have this promise that they're going to, found throughout the prophets, that both the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom are going to return. So basically, this is the idea behind the blessing, the curse, and the promise of restoration. That the people, as long as while they were in the land, as long as they maintained the commandments, they were going to receive the blessing. As soon as they started breaking the commandments, there was these plagues. There was, and if they didn't turn back, there was going to be an army that came and conquered them, and the army came and conquered them and scattered them throughout the nations. And then there's the scriptures that are saying that if you turn back and come back to Elohim, then he will have compassion on you and bring you back to the land. And this is what the blessing and the curse and the promise of restoration is. Symptoms of the curse. Are you guys ready for this? These symptoms of the curse are kind of like if Ephraim is looking, they'll recognize that they're not in the land. There's going to be plagues, and there's going to be miscarriages, and there's going to be sicknesses, and there's going to be blindness. We're familiar with this one. This is a symptom of the curse. And you'll have to excuse the mouse just doesn't function. And Ephraim doesn't realize it. So this is the end of part one. Does anybody have any questions?
I think you laid that out pretty well. It's a good review, especially with the maps and the pictures. But it left me with a lot of questions. But I'm not going to ask those questions because I want to see where the next one goes.
Okay. Well, the next one's going to be next week.
Okay.
Or the next.
You don't want to do it today?
No, I'd like to leave it.
Okay. That'll be fine. Anybody have question or comment? Somebody has something on the chat here. Thank you. Thank you. Are you saying that we are going to end up back there? I think we talked a little about this the other night.
Yes. If you keep the commandments of Elohim and you have the testimony of the Son of Man, circumstances are changing in the world. I don't know if you're aware of that. To me, this coronavirus is a wake-up call, and this is nothing compared to what's going to happen. And the best way to look at it is what happened in Babylon, for example, when they were released to go back to the land. It's sort of like, okay, you're going to go back to the land. But if you look at the exodus from Egypt, when that happened, and similar circumstances are going on right now, is there was these plagues that were put upon Egypt, and the people of Israel were like forced out of the land. And this is what's going to happen now. What I mean, forced out of the land, they were forced out of Egypt. And likewise, what we're looking at is we're going to be forced out also.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe in a greater exodus?
I think of it as the greater second exodus, yes. So if you're aware of this, then you are, how to say, you can prepare to a point.
You may contact us at Jackson Snyder Presents at this email address, veroyahad@gmail.com. That is veroyahad@gmail.com. And let me remind you, you are listening to Jackson Snyder Presents with your host tonight, Bogdan G. Shrumkov. Thank you for listening. We'll be right back. Jackson Snidel Present is back. Join us now for more of this interesting discussion.
Mentally, it's one thing, but what I see is that there's going to be this uprooting. Everybody who, again, believes in the commandments of Elohim and the testimony of the Son of Man is going to be uprooted from their out of Babylon. We're in Babylon right now. We're in Egypt right now. We're in the land of our enemy, and the events that are taking place are no different than the plagues and the events that took place when the children of Israel were in Egypt.
Do you concur?
I concur.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Concur.
Affirmative.
Keep this under your hat until an announcement is made.
But they've been happening all along these thousands of years, one calamity after another.
Agreed.
And I'm thinking that maybe that was in the plan. But I'm wondering about people that are in their 60s and 70s. Do you think that this is going to come about before they pass on? If not,
I do.
Why would they want to prepare anything? Do you think, for instance, this will happen before the end of your life?
I do.
Okay. So you're talking about something being just imminent.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll give you, and I'm not going to predict anything. Okay. But I'm just giving you, you can tell the season, you can tell. And this is something that you can tell that's going on, like this, the COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things is that takes place prior to the second coming of the Son of Man is the rebuilding of the temple. And I firmly believe that it's going to happen within the next 4 or 5 years. And the reason I say that is that I think it's going to possibly happen under the Trump administration. Now, I'm not saying I like Trump one way or another. I'm just saying he's not what you would consider to be a career politician. And he was responsible for the acknowledging Jerusalem as being the capital of Jerusalem, which no career politician would touch. And he also gave them, acknowledged the Golan Heights, which is another thing that no career politician would touch. The point is that when Trump is out, unless there's somebody else coming down the pipe, which is a real possible, I'm not saying it can't happen, but just based on this, it'll go right back to career politicians and they won't touch this.
Mm-hmm.
So I earnestly think that this is things are just getting started, just warming up. So,
well, that's leaving us with a challenge right there.
Okay.
Got some chat here you might want to look at. Barbara's talking about the outlawing of the purchase of seeds. Tia has a good question, and that is, why does God allow evil? That's one that has been argued and gone over ever since our faith began. Why does he allow that? There's a real good explanation of that, but no time to do it here. Somebody's been duped by the Zionists. Don't forget to put the Jesuits and the Catholics in there. Let's see. Yes, the Catholic Church has claimed Jerusalem. They wanted to put their capital back there. Anything else here? Mike Howard's got some stuff. So that's it. And I thank you for coming on, Guy. Oh, wait a minute. We've got a raised hand here.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm probably getting ahead, so it may be next week. But if I'm understanding correctly, you're talking about we're going to be brought back into the land, all those who are observing the commandments faithfully, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then how do you handle Matthew 20, chapter 24, and when he's talking about, like in verse 31, Yeshua is saying, He will send out his angels with the loud trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. I mean, that's a whole planetary.
Yes. Basically, the idea is that at the second coming, there's going to be two groups of believers.
Okay.
The first group of believer is those that will have been martyred and are in the first resurrection. The other group of believers are those that are going to be alive to greet the Son of Man at his return. What we're discussing here are those that are going to be gathered for the wedding feast so that they'll be alive to greet the Son of Man at his return.
But what knows that he's going to come get with his angels? Wouldn't they be? He speaks of them being at the wedding feast also.
There are going to be the wedding feast basically is for it's a parable, so to speak, that is describing those believers that are going to be alive at the second coming of the Son of Man. For example, the parable of the 10 virgins. These are believers that are going to be alive at the second coming. And most people that don't study this don't realize, first off, there's so many people that don't understand about this gathering, this second Exodus, greater second Exodus.
That's for sure.
But the other thing about it is, and this is one of the things I'm trying to get out there, is that there's going to be a purge. There's going to be 3 purges specifically. And these purges are designed to eliminate those that are not really going to make it to the very end. And this is what's being described in the parable of the 10 virgins, where half are going to be separated from the wise virgins. And this purge is similar to what took place in the wilderness after being released from Egypt. The people were tested and purged. We're being provided in the prophetic scriptures with these survival instructions, and we're actually being provided with the test questions on how to survive this purge. And this is what the Son of Man is conveying in his kingdom parables. So basically that is something that we can cover at another meeting, but this was just to introduce the idea that Ephraim doesn't realize that she's not in the land, that he's not in the land, that he's actually in the land of the enemies. He doesn't recognize that he is Ephraim at all, and that Elohim's people are going to be destroyed for the lack of the knowledge, the understanding of this information.
Good answer. I'm just thinking about, I'm lucky to have lived this long. Why should I even worry about it unless it comes at the most inopportune time?
Was not this thing dropped on us at a most inopportune time?
It came just out of nowhere, but we know where it came from.
Right.
As far as that goes, and why we haven't had this before now. Well, we have had some epidemics, but nothing like this. This is the pandemic.
Yep.
Well, I suppose we'll get that answer next time, right?
We'll be addressing it, yes.
All right.
Okay.
Let's see. Just looking at the chat a little more. I think Norman had one here that was a question. How, if the tribes are lost, how did Yeshua and the apostles know where the tribes resided when told to, I guess, go out and get them?
This is not a simple answer.
No.
But I'll try and do the best I can. Basically, if you look at the parable of the wedding feast, there was this king who wanted to have a wedding feast for his son, and he sent out his servants, which were the disciples at that time, and they refused him, and they ended up, this is the way the parable goes, I'm paraphrasing it, and killed the servants. And the king was angry, and
now we get to see you.
Oh, okay. So, anyways, the king was angry, and he sent an army to destroy the city, which was placed in 70 A.D. So then the king has decided to send out another group of servants, which is in the future, because the wedding hasn't taken place yet. And we're talking about at the end of the age, because the parables are about the end of the age. And he was sending them out. Well, the thing is that when the Son of Man sent the disciples out 2 by 2, he was telling them, he was conveying information about his kingdom parables. And when he talked to them, for example, in Matthew 24, they asked him, what are the signs of your coming in the end of the age? And he gave them the information. Well, that information was not for, as I understand it, for the disciples at the end of the age, but rather that information is for the believers at the end of the age. So if they were being talked to, provided with information, they were basically like a prophet, so to speak. So did I answer the question?
That was a hard question.
Hard answer.
Yeah. We'll have to think about that. Howard's got
so basically, to simplify it, the Son of Man was speaking to the disciples, but the message was not for them. It's for the believers at the end of the age. That's the short answer. So I know everybody doesn't necessarily agree with that, but that's how how I understand it. So
there's as many interpretations as there are preachers, really. So the best we can do, I'm primarily a preterist. I believe that much of this has already happened, but there's no reason why we can't listen to somebody new in regards to this. It kind of takes us back to our roots in the conservative church. So it's a good thing. We have this particular time on Shabbat not to fight with each other. Not some people have criticized because we have something controversial on the Shabbat. Well, you don't have to come. The reason we do it is so that we can get a diversity of views, a diversity of people. Sometimes it's hard to get someone to come on here. They're very intimidated. A lot of teachers have just not showed up for me. So what I'm saying is that, what am I saying? You can't get enough knowledge and you can't get enough wisdom of the Holy Spirit that you can't break it down into what you need or what the Holy Spirit needs to speak to you about. Amen. I think Passover is coming up here. For us, it's April 7th, I believe. Right. So let's see, next time we get together will be after that. So I want to wish everybody a wonderful Pesach and matzah feast. Stay out of that yeast. Thank you, Guy.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom to you all.
I love you, Yahweh, oh my strength, my solid rock and my stronghold. I love you, oh Yahweh, my rescuer, my refuge, my tower of strength, my thunder. The earth shook and trembled, the mountains were troubled, the smoke rose in billows for me. The fires were consuming, the darkness was looming, and your voice thundered, yes it thundered, thundered, oh my Father, did it ever. Thunder, thunder, thunder. I call you Yahweh, oh my praise. The snares of death were before me. I call you, oh Yahweh, in my distress, for Satan made me afraid. You thunder. The earth shook and trembled, the mountains were troubled, the smoke rose in billows for me. The fires were consuming, the darkness was looming, and your voice thundered, yes it thundered, thundered, oh my father did it ever. Thunder, thunder, thunder. I love you, Yahweh, oh my rock. To kind folks you show forth kindness. I love you, oh Yahweh, my mighty one. To pure folks you show yourself pure as thunder. The earth shook and trembled, the mountains were troubled, the smoke rose in billows for me. The fires were consuming, the darkness was looming, and your voice thundered, yes it thundered, thundered, oh my father did it ever. Thunder, thunder, thunder. Lightning, thunder.
That song is from my album, actually a series of 4 discs of biblical songs, the lyrics for which come right straight out of the Bible, and the melodies for which are mostly klezmer Hebraic melodies. Elohims, Elohymns. There's over 200 of them. If you're interested in them, I'll send you a disc full. What you hear on here occasionally is one of the Elohims, and of course those are available for you as well. Now here's a little something else. Before I had this interview with Guy Smith, I had a little talk with him on the phone. And as I surmised in the first place, what he believes about the end times and what I believe about them are as far apart as east from west. But Guy has the consensus opinion, that is, of a prophecy futurist, whereas I see an awful lot of what people call Bible prophecy as already having happened in the past, including the book of Revelation. He sees this all as future. So I had someone ask me, if that's the case, why are you going to put him on? Because I believe in unity and diversity, not diversity in conflict. Everybody that's got something to say, and what they say is godly, and if they are Elohim's people, no matter what peripheral ideas or notions they believe, then they have something worthwhile to say. Yet nothing's worthwhile to say unless there's somebody there to listen to it. That's why this show is unique. I try to bring on people of different opinions than mine, not to cut them down or try to tear them apart or get in any kind of debates. I just want to hear what they have to say and then ask them questions, if I might. I don't have to believe what they say, and a lot of them I don't believe a word of what they say. But that is not important. What I believe is not important. What they believe is important, and what you believe is important. I know you're not going to line up with me on the prophecy, because I see it mostly having occurred in the past. I think for these days we ought to be looking in a different place for our prophecy, specifically Isaiah 17, 18, and 19, rather than at Revelation. But then what do I know? So in the conversation, Guy gave me a couple tips of what are going to happen next week in his interview. And I thought they were pretty interesting, and they probably will line up better with what you believe. In this segment, he just wanted to lay down some ground rules. In the next, he's going to tell us how this is to affect his vision of the future. Here are a couple excerpts from that phone call. Just a few minutes.
You're a different animal for me, so you'll have to excuse me. I was raised Southern Baptist, so... Yeah, well, I used to be a Baptist. I'm one that believes that the world's about to be judged. Okay, I believe, the Son of Man said that, his second coming would be as the days of Noah. So what I see is that we're looking at judgment, and for those who are not believers, it is scary stuff. But if you are a believer, he's provided a way for physical escape, just like he provided. Let me just finish this. Just like he provided a place for Noah to escape, there is a place prepared for the remnant of Israel to physically escape for this period. And that's what's being conveyed. And if you look at it, the remnant, if you research the remnant of Israel, they're going to be drawn back into the land, not to be martyred and not to be killed by, all the plagues and everything. They're going to be drawn back into the land to be protected. So what I find interesting is I'm in the camp that there's going to be a temple built. I'm not date setting at all. Okay. I want to be very clear, but it would seem to me that if it was going to be built, it quite possibly would be done while Trump is president. Now you can like the man, don't like the man, whatever, but he has done a couple of things that career politicians wouldn't do. And that suggests that this temple would quite possibly be built while, he's in power. Because as soon as he's out of power, the career politicians come back in and, the game changes. So, well, see, to me, that is the event that coincides with the start of the final 7 years, the 70th week of Daniel. So, and again, I'm a futurist, so I see that, in that respect, No, what that means is that the, in Revelation 12, where the woman is going to be protected for 3.5 years. Okay. Well, the 3.5 years is the second half of that period. Well, I know that's based on, on that, but if it isn't, if the futurist thing comes, into play, then the idea is that when the temple is built and this confirmation of the covenant takes place, there's a 3.5 year window to get to the place of refuge where the two sticks are going to take a wild guess. It's all about being in the land, the promise of restoration. It was, well, I believe that we're the lost 10 tribes. We have someone joining us. Hello? Did I lose you, brother? Well, the thing is that the lost 10 tribes are scattered at the four corners of the earth. And it's all, in the promise of restoration in Deuteronomy chapter 30, talks about the gathering back to the land. So it has to the southern kingdom, but I don't see the northern kingdom being drawn back.
And now, my friends, let me remind you that you can get Vero Essene Yahad programs several times a week over the internet and live. Yes, these are live broadcasts in which you can chime in with your questions, comments, or criticisms. Here's the schedule. All times are Eastern Time. Tuesday evening, 9 p.m. I am there with you. Friday evening, 9 p.m. You are there with me. And on Shabbat, we have a short liturgical Shabbat service at 11 a.m. featuring the Nazarene Essene liturgy, the Shema, and a different speaker every week. That service is usually about 45 minutes. And then on Shabbat at 3:33 p.m., we have the 333 Club. Again, meet up with me there. Let's dialogue. All you must do is go on your PC, surfing to www.theyahad.com at those times, and we shall be there for you. And if you are on Android, first of all, I pity you. Second of all, you can get us too at those times.